We are
Hart and George. And this is Dream Window.
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 Hey, my darling window.
Oh, bonjour, window. May I look through you today, baby?
I'm a window to the night, taking flight.
As I look out the window, I see off in the distance long rolling hills, one hill after the other as far as the eye can see, almost like waves of water. And running over the hills are horses that are almost like a shiny black, like a pool of oil on the side of the road in the summer, with long white hair.
That's called Black Beauty. It's one of the first reggae songs. One of my cousins. We were in the basement in Toronto. And he was just like, and he was
Those are the
singing.
exact lyrics to the song.
It was a wanna what you see. I tell you about a horse named Black Beauty.
They did the horse sound.
They did the horse sound, and that was, and he just kept on doing it over and over.
How
to
do
his child had the record, was doing a little bit of scratching, and
Really?
But yeah, I wanna what you see. I tell you about a horse named Black Beauty. That is about as perfect of a recreation of that moment
Wow.
as could have been done.
That's incredible.
That was like time travel.
So, do you know who sings the song?
I have no idea.
All the horse impressions I've ever done are based off of like horse sound effects from like cartoons, or I don't know how many horses I've ever heard doing.
I'm mostly around city slave horses.
Yeah, that's right. The police horse is really the only horse I've seen.
And even them, they're still working for the man.
Yeah.
Still totally working for the man, and I think they know it.
Have you ever ridden a horse?
I have not.
You haven't.
I have not.
Have you ridden a motorcycle?
No.
When I was young, I thought if it was like 600 horsepower, there were 600 tiny little horses in the motor. Like, I remember seeing the first nature documentary on horses, and I thought it was taking place inside an engine. I was like, that's what it looks like inside an engine.
That's what it looks like inside an engine, but just a bunch of horses on a treadmill.
I was watching a documentary yesterday. I don't know why this reminds me of this, but it was on the history of graffiti, and it was Wall Riders, narrated by John Waters, and that was kind of why I got it. And there's this guy in Philadelphia, and his name is Cornbread, and he's like, one day I'm reading the paper, and it says, famed graffiti artist Cornbread is dead, and he's like, what the no, I'm not dead. So he's like, I got to do something to show that I'm still here. So he's like, I break into the zoo and I spray paint Cornbread isn't dead on an elephant.
Well, that dovetails perfectly into the story about how I gave a woman on Mother's Day morning. I'm walking, I leave my apartment. I'm walking down the street.
Yeah.
And it's a woman with two small children.
Okay.
And the two children, there's this giant tree that's in bloom. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I sit in my balcony and I see people stop time and time and time again and take a picture of this tree.
The audacity.
So I come down and there's like the two children are holding it like
holding the tree?
Well, two pieces of branches with the flowers in their hands, and then the mother's going and picking another one out, and I walk by and I'm just like, Madame, you can't pick at that, and she's like, well, she just pris deux, and I'm like,
pris deux? What is that?
She just took two, even though she took three.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, and I even said, I'm like, you know, je veux pas vous chicaner devant les enfants. I'm like, I don't want to give you in front of the kids.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't be picking and taking branches out of trees of flowers. I'm like, it's for everyone's enjoyment.
Yeah.
And
well, what does
like,
it do when you break a branch? Like,
I mean, that bit of branch took a year to grow.
yeah,
How about if I cut a year off your life?
What are you, a pack of cigarettes?
That's what she says. She's like, oh, it's just a year.
Yeah.
That's what she's saying. It's just a year. And if everyone who took a photo of the tree took a piece of a branch out of that tree,
yeah,
you know what it would look like? And you know you're now holding
a stump?
A dead stick.
A tall stump?
Yeah, it looked way better attached to the tree alive than it looks in your hand.
Yeah.
For 5 minutes. It's about hiking. It's about basic conservation and staying on trails and not walking off of trails because, you know, yeah, I remember when you have to be yelled at by a conservationist one day, and I'm in the Grand Canyon, and I kind of went off the trail and then stepped
and
on
then
this.
You fell off the Grand Canyon.
No. Yeah, what is it? Next step's a doozy. First step's a doozy. No, it was. I stepped on this like twig, but this like rocky twig that had like 2 leaves on it.
Yeah, because there's no plant life there.
And right? It was off trail.
Yeah.
And the tour guide we had basically a trail like leader.
Yeah.
And he's like, stay on the trail. That thing was alive for 400 years and you just killed it.
Whoa. 400 years and it grew 1 inch.
And he's like, there's so little water here.
Yeah.
But it had leaves on. It was green. And you stupid bumbling fool just killed it.
And everything he's saying is echoing too, right? Like, you stupid, stupid, bumbling, fool.
And that's the last level about that whole story, though. And those trees actually weren't on city property; they were on private property behind a gate.
What?
And the branch just comes over the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And to those people, and like you can't even get there with them. I'm like, it's not about me; it's about the tree.
Yeah.
It's about the year of the life that you cut off both of those branches.
Well, you're seeing the bigger picture.
But number 2. If I came into your backyard and picked a branch out of your tree,
like
you'd be like, what the are you doing?
That is something I would do, though.
And then now you just walking down the street and you think you can pull something off of this person's private property. And I'm like, I can't. And I'm not defending private property rights, but I'm like, really, the cheek.
I got a confession to make. I'm a plant plucker.
And
I'm trying to resolve my plant plucking ways, but I am a plant plucker.
What do you mean you pluck plants?
I'm a plant plucker.
What does that mean?
I go around and I pluck plants. I see a beautiful plant, I pluck it.
Just pluck it?
I'm not even ashamed of my plant plucking.
What is the rush?
Because
I need to understand.
I see all these colors floating around, and I want to gather them and hold them close to me and set them up and take photos. But you know what? I think you're saying.
I love them. You're ready for a glow up.
It's selfish. It's selfish. It's you're saying you see the bigger picture. You see this tree's for everyone, and these people are like, we want to destroy this moment for ourselves to capture a photo, and then that's the end of these moments for everyone. Right?
I mean, well, it's even worse than capturing the moment for them. It wasn't the capturing the moment. They captured a piece of their arm. It's like, George is a really cool guy. What? Let me take his finger.
2 episodes ago, I was talking about, is inside a tree, does it feel like a chair? And you're like, stop humanizing trees. And now you're like, they got fingers and arms. That tree was just waving at its best friend across the street when its arm was ripped off.
Please go back to episode 1 to find out that George is a complete hypocrite.
Or maybe we're slowly, perspectives are becoming one. Here, I'm just going to turn this nozzle here. Do you hear that?
Ooh.
That's a waterfall that I just turned on.
I know, I'm getting mist all over me, and I don't like it.
You don't like
I don't like mist in my eyes.
You're not a fan? Mist is like beautiful in a photo, less beautiful in your house.
I like sand.
You prefer
It's good
sand?
as an idea, impractical in real life.
I'd say sand is like solid mist.
No, I was on this big sand dune. There's a picture of myself with my partner, and my eyes are just like, yeah, it could have been a nice photo,
Yeah.
but I was just like completely just squinting to try to keep the sand from blowing in my eyes.
Where was the sand dune?
It was in France.
I've heard France is known for its sand dunes. That's why people go there, right?
And half of it, exactly. You know what I
Sand
mean?
dunes.
Like, that's not why I went there. And on day 2, the family's like, you gotta see the sand dune.
Really? What part of France?
This is the Bay d'Arachan, or d'Aracan.
Oh, okay.
Just outside, like about 45 minutes from Bordeaux.
Oh, okay.
And it's the Dune du Pilat. Before we went to the sand dune, we had like oysters and crab and like 4 types of maybe some scallops and just this whole, in this little lobster shack that was absolutely delicious. But yeah, then we went to the sand dune, and I'm like, that's a lot of sand.
You know what would make the beach better? No water. And bumps.
That was it. Before we went there, the dad got out, and there was a casino.
On the sand dune?
Well, no,
How big is this?
it's like before you get to the
Is it in the sand dune? It
before
sounds
you
like a
get to like
Bond
the
villain's.
national park that has the sand dune.
Yeah.
Like about 15 minutes, there's this little town, this little resort town.
Yeah.
So the dad's like, "Oh, you guys are going to the beach?
Yeah.
Drop me off the casino. I'll see you in 2 hours."
I love sand dunes and casinos.
And I'm like, "How come I can't hang out with Pops?"
I was watching a documentary on Robert Motherwell. He's an abstract expressionist from New York in like the times of Jackson Pollock, and he's kind of speaking like he and his contemporaries invented abstract expressionism. Like this style of art didn't exist, and I was kind of like, okay, that's an interesting like imagine a world without just art like that. But then I had a book that I was looking through on tropical fish, and I was like, just the backs of these fish are just abstract paintings. Like you could just look at a book of fishes. Drowning in the ocean is like drowning in an art gallery.
But the women in Provincetown, hello, Mary Martin. And when they talk about like Norman Mailer and like these and all the poets and you know Gore Vidal and people from that generation, not really Gore Vidal, but they would speak about just specifically Norman Mailer about this was a guy who went to war, no therapy, it's the 60s, and they drank their way out of all the pain and horror that they saw. And they were just not nice people. And they just didn't deal with it. So, I mean, was it in vogue? No. I mean, the women these days are like, they were horrible people.
Yeah.
We had to live with them. And this was like one of the most brilliant writing minds at the time, but he was just broken.
I think a new rule for art should be, no matter how great your work is, you have to be better as a person. Yeah.
I'm out.
Well, actually, when you're talking about Gore Vidal, I heard he lived on a street with that presidential guy and the hair salon guy. It was Al Gore, Vidal Sassoon, all lived beside each other on the block.
You got it. I walked right into that one. That's a great one.
Is Vidal Sassoon a person? Or just a brand?
It was a brand. I do not know.
What is that, 2 people?
I read this article, been making me feel good the past week, about how if you live in an area that has like 12 different types of songbirds, that you tend to have a much better life.
Right.
I really try to meditate on my Sundays. Really try to concentrate on making that run time really about more. And this week, I made a very conscious effort. And then the last half of my run, I took my earpiece out and I was just counting the different bird sounds.
Really?
And while running, trying to consciously, is that a different one from what I heard before? I think the number in the article was 12. I got up to 16.
16? Really?
By really concentrating and listening.
And this is Montreal Park, right?
I mean, and it was from walking from my apartment.
Yeah.
And then going earlier, I started the day and that was kind of like, oh, this is going to be my game today. And before I went for my run, I was up to 6. And if you pay attention and if you really take that time to really meditate and really concentrate and be like, and is that different? Oh, and you're like, after a while, you're like, oh, that's totally different from any of the other birds. Yeah, okay, I got another one.
That's interesting. You're saying that first 12 different bird species increases someone's happiness, but what increases your happiness? Because you could not notice that, right? I feel like noticing it must really...
I think it's one of those, I think it was a complete false correlation. I think it does have a lot to do with just saying, hey, general white supremacy and saying people who live in the city are terrible, and if you live out in the leafy suburbs with birds,
right? And
I'm like, well, so exactly, this is just something to convince white people that they're still doing okay.
So basically, they're saying an increase of songbirds and a decrease in culturalism is what leads to a happy.
Exactly. You just might as well call the study "Where Black People Live Suck," because that's also what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
Where poor people live suck. And it's like, well, it's not their fault, and good on you.
Yeah.
You got some fucking inheritance
We
from
prefer,
your grandmother.
You know what? That's actually interesting. Why would different species of birds make you happy, but different groups of humans not make you happy? Shouldn't humans make us happy?
Again, sounds more like white supremacy,
really,
does it?
Birds?
Manji bat.
How about just letting some birds loose in the city?
How about not yelling at old women and just picking at trees? But I still think I'm right.
You know what? I really think that, though, paying attention and noticing the different types of flowers and birds I'm going to try and do that. You've inspired me. It's
about, again, it all comes from breathing and trying to be present.
Yeah.
And trying to pay attention to the little things. And not being into my head.
That's the sound of the window purring. Oh, petting the window.
Wanna what you see? I tell you about a horse named Black Beauty. Wanna what you see? I tell you about a horse named Black Beauty. Wanna what you see? I tell you about a horse named Black Beauty. We are
Hart and George, and this is Dream Window.